Hi there, I'm Carrie-Anne Dukes, the Senior Marketing Manager at eComOne and organiser of this podcast. Richard is still in Thailand at the world's biggest SEO conference, and that's why you have me introducing this episode today. Welcome to episode 204 of the eComOne podcast. In this episode, Richard speaks with Christopher Panteli, the co-founder of Linkifi, to talk about everything digital PR. They talk the impact of good digital PR on e-commerce businesses, the most effective strategies for getting media coverage, how to use digital PR to boost your SEO efforts, how digital PR brings credibility to your business, how to build those relationships to secure those all-important links. And of course, there is so much more in this one. If you enjoy this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast, so you are always the first to know the latest developments in e-commerce. Now, let's head over to this fantastic episode.
Hey Chris, how you doing?
Hey Richard, thanks for having me. Yeah, doing good, you?
No problem at all. I'm really good. I think the last time I saw you was on a rooftop in Chiang Mai.
Yes,
Thailand.
times. And we're going back again in a week's time.
We will have been and gone by the time this one goes live. So yeah, looking forward to catching up in person again. But yeah, me and Chris met. With 12 months to the day almost, wouldn't it?
Yeah, bloody hell.
And had a good chat on digital PR. So I thought, let's get Chris on.
That's it.
And, so before we get into the good stuff, I think it'd be great for you to introduce yourself, Chris, and how you got into the world of e-commerce digital PR.
So my name's Chris Panteli. I'm the co-founder of Linkifi. So we're a digital PR agency focusing on high authority, editorially earned media links and coverage. And I suppose I got into digital PR quite organically. I had a small affiliate site and I was doing PR link building for myself via the very, very recently now defunct Harrow, which they just made an announcement. I think yesterday or the day before. So for anyone that knows, this is like an inbound request platform which connects journalists with subject experts in order to provide commentary, and then hopefully they'll feature you within their article and you can win a link back to your website. So I was doing this for my own website. That's when I came across my now business partner. He had some clients that were interested in this sort of link building, this very white hat, very high authority, premium tier one links. And I was able to build his clients some links via this method of inbound PR on Harrow. And we saw a demand for it and we just grew from there.
Yeah. So Harrow's gone. Well, I think they've got about a month left, haven't you, on your subscription or something like that? Did I read yesterday, day before? Yeah. All changed there. So obviously worked in the sort of link building and digital PR space for quite some time. Yeah.
It's easy.
Who's your business partner? I might know it. I'm not sure if I know him or not.
Nick Biggs. He's the tall, handsome one.
Ah, of course.
Was he there?
No idea.
I think he was on the roof with us. Maybe I was the one chatting if I'd had a couple of drinks.
I'm not sure. I must have met Nick. Yeah, I must have done. Yeah. Is he? Did you get you next?
Yeah.
Is he with you? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going out in force.
Yeah, he keeps me under control.
So I think when obviously our listeners, e-com store owners, marketers, when we talk about digital PR, I think there's maybe a little bit of confusion about what it actually is. Is sort of people thought it's link building, and there's obviously there's an element of that, but it's a certain type of link. What makes digital PR so important to e-com businesses, and how is it sort of different to what a lot of people might call sort of traditional link building?
Yeah, I think it's really multifaceted in today's climate with the onset of AI now, search GPT, large language models, the prevalence of search outside of just Google. It's really, really becoming important for us to make our brand visible everywhere and to the best of our ability to control the narrative of what we want search and AI to be surfacing about who we are as a business, as a retailer, as an e-com store. We want to be able to provide as much information that we can, feed that into the beast, as it were. Traditional link building is very much a pay-to-play sort of scenario where you might be doing guest posts, you might be doing niche edits, buying from vendors. I've got nothing against that. That's not what we do. I think there is a place for that as a holistic sort of link building strategy. But digital PR provides so many benefits in the sense that you are having your brand featured and talked about in tier 1 premium news publications, which is providing authority to you and your business. It gives you an element of control over that narrative, albeit, you do need to have something newsworthy. But it gives you more control than just buying a guest post or a niche edit. And we're aligning ourselves with the creme de la creme of publications and authority, which in turn is what the large language models are crawling, reading, learning. People aren't just searching now for products on Google. They're asking for where they can search for on the AI, the search GPTs, the Google Geminis, and the more information we can feed, the better. And obviously, the added benefit is we're gonna try and get that juicy backlink as well, so that we can still perform well in Google.
So quite a few bits there, then, Chris. I think ultimately we're trying to get our clients, on higher authority sites, but the sites definitely that are used and getting crawled by the large language models, and obviously that's we probably wouldn't use that large language model term 18 months ago. We probably didn't mention that on the rooftop back a year ago even, but it is changing, isn't it? Obviously the whole, you look at page 1 of Google, we've got that AI overview, for example, on the majority of searches, maybe not all ecom searches, but, quite a few. So we're trying to get on high authority domains, which, is an element of traditional link building, but more from a natural standpoint by creating, obviously, we'll get into that, but by creating, something that's genuinely newsworthy, that somebody wants to link to or discuss or list, or what. Obviously, there's a few different ways. But how do you stand out? I think is the thing I'm interested in, because you're reaching out to maybe you think you're creating a half decent story as somebody that's listening, and I think this is the challenge that a lot of people have trying to get placements on these bigger publications, coming up with an idea and then getting a publication to accept it. How do you really stand out in a very crowded marketplace? Most e-com stores, they're one of maybe 50 people vying for, whether that's page 1 listings or whatever it is, but ultimately you're probably one of half a dozen trying to get those placements on the high authority domains. How do you stand out? One, sort of when you're reaching out to publications, but really, just how do you stand out, full stop?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's not easy. SEOs have hijacked digital PR. I suppose it would have been the last bastion of good link building, and I think that's ultimately probably a large reason why Harrow has shut down, just because of the sort of spam. We're living in an era now of brand building. This is ultimately, these are going to be the e-com stores, the businesses, the online properties that survive. We need to be building brands, maintaining a brand. And the way that we do that, or one of the important factors of that, is digital PR. Getting our name out there, being in multiple places, driving referral traffic, driving branded search as well, by making us making everybody aware who we are. So how do we stand out? It's a good question. There's multiple, e-com stores in the
You're teasing us there, aren't you? I'm going to go back to that in a bit, because I guess that's the secret. That's the secret sauce, isn't it? Obviously, ultimately having those relationships goes a long way. But we'll come back to it a bit. But obviously, we know it's not as straightforward as we just magically come up with a good idea, and then people are going to link to us. Getting your brand, your e-com store, sort of digital PR ready. Let's talk about that, because I think this is something that I know we've spoken about before, and before we came on, getting sites, getting brands ready that actually people want to relate, connect, link to. What advice can you give to our listeners about getting your e-com store ready for digital PR?
Okay. Yeah, this is a great question, and this is ultimately the starting point, which any e-com store owner that's listening now can start looking at their business and the way that they're set up, and set themselves up for success for potential future PR efforts. And as well, it has benefits outside of just being PR ready, because these things that you can do will go to driving more organic traffic by growing your EEAT and your authority in the eyes of Google. So it's so many benefits to like a single cause, as it were. So first and foremost, we need to be looking at what niche we're operating in and what broader topicality that niche has. So, for example, if you are in an e-com selling any sort of vitamin, dietary stuff, anything of that nature, then we want to be finding an authoritative person in the health space, ideally with credentials and a wider web visibility, and have that person in some way aligned to your website. So this could be somebody that you have as a guest writer, as a contributing editor, an author. It could even be someone who just fact checks articles. You'll see some of the big websites, Healthline, some of the big finance websites, they'll often do this. It'll be written by a writer and maybe fact checked by like a CFP or a medical doctor. Good websites with good content probably are already doing this. Because it's just such an intuitively good thing to do. It makes sense. But if you're not doing that and you're in a niche which logically lends itself to a broader topicality, for example, if you're selling clothing of any sort, apparel, whatnot, if you can find a fashion expert or a fashion writer, if you're in the niche of, let's say, sporting goods, sportswear, then a qualified fitness instructor. So this is a logical sort of expert that aligns with most niches, and have that person on your website somehow visible on the about page, whatnot, contributing some either content or like reviewing content. This sets you up perfectly to then start thinking about the sorts of either inbound requests you can answer to journalists or wider campaigns where you're going to come up with a story yourself and outreach to journalists. Because you've got to remember, the most important thing is journalists, they are writing for their bosses in order to drive clicks and traffics to the articles that they publish. They're not bothered about giving us links or giving e-com stores coverage. So that's where we have to align our interests with theirs and give them newsworthy and credible stories. And the way that we do that is we take our e-com niche, we align it to that broad topicality with expertise, and then we can come up with a story that will interest the journalists and make sense for them to be publishing that from the expert that we're going to put that content forward from.
So aligning with a already credible source or a credible person in the niche, what about trying to, I'm thinking of the listeners now, they're thinking, well, okay, that's great. We can, we probably, well, I was at a conference last year and we met this influencer that's got 100,000 followers and they're published here. And I know that John in sales spoke to him quite a lot. I'm getting carried away here, but ultimately, you can connect with these people. And then obviously there's probably some sort of fee as to have them as maybe like a brand ambassador, or that's probably a step too far. But let's say the brands that are thinking they want to do it themselves without using a third party sort of brand ambassador spokesperson. What's probably a good starting point for them where, it's more like, well, as a team, the MD, he's quite vocal. He speaks at a few of these events, and obviously that wraps in then, it's probably two questions in one, but EAAT, obviously using the different signals from, branding people as opposed to products. What would you say would be a good start point to branding people that are already work in an organization?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I would say you can definitely do that, because the lay of the land now with these, with the way that the journalists are working it is more important than ever now for them to be using verifiable people. Okay. So long gone are the days where sort of dodgy backstreet affiliate sites could just be pitching as like fake AI bot personas and win links, right? The journalists want to verify these people. And if you can definitely look to your own team. Okay. So We recently talked to one of the guys who works for a big clothing company in the UK, and they're quite fitness orientated, and they have loads of people that work for the company in many different positions: SEO, marketing, sales, customer support. And these guys, in their spare time, in their personal lives, they're into fitness. Maybe they take fitness classes and stuff. So you can definitely look to your own team. I would just suggest that you need to make sure that is that's tracking through across like social profiles, and you're telling that story in multiple places as well. And then you can be using these people as part of your PR outreach as well.
So what might be a good exercise, listeners, is to, if you're thinking of, if it's you that's listening now as the MD or senior marketer, shareholder in the business, maybe do a Google of your own name, and see, whether that's, your own name plus the industry you're in, and seeing what comes up in that first 10 spots, and think, well, actually, we could easily, I could easily create, account here and manage that, and, and add content to, insert, whether that's an Instagram account where I could, get Marcus and do it to help me a bit more with my LinkedIn profile, and just give my LinkedIn profile an audit. It's quite fairly straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So
and you can pop that into your LinkedIn as well. You'll see this from many founders. They'll say, I'm the founder of whatever the company is, and I'm a such and such nerd, or such and such expert. If you can portray that about yourself, that you have that expertise within that broader like niche topicality of what your e-com store is operating in, then that then gives you the ability to talk publicly to journalists about your company, and that you have some credibility and expertise within the space that you're selling those products to your customers in. So it makes sense, and it's good for business as well.
Yeah. I mean, I would say go and have a look at Chris on LinkedIn, because if Chris is doing this, aren't you, for your business? You're very active on personal brand perspective, talking about the different things in the market that's happening, the changes, different case studies that you're working on, different client in different industries, so obviously you're getting picked up from that, as an expert, no doubt, and then getting asked to come on podcasts like this, for example, because you're the expert in digital PR, et cetera, along those lines sort of thing. So yeah. I think quite a lot of founders can be quite sort of, I'm not sure about, but it can be as simple as having a page about the founder, a page about the team, the specific people in the business that are the authority, building that authority. And obviously it starts, it doesn't mean day one you're going to be on 100 podcasts and be featured in 50 publications. It starts with that first bit of media, and then looking at LinkedIn, for example. So, okay, so we've now identified that we've got, a subject matter expert in the business, or working with somebody outside the business. We know that, we sell a certain type of products. Let's stick with the health niche, maybe, for example. And there's a couple of things, directions, really. It's obviously building relationships with the journalists, for example, in that niche. How do you approach sort of building that out? Because obviously you've been doing this a while, no doubt you've got this massive advantage because it's your business, that you build relationships out. But what would you say to listeners that are trying to start out and build relationships with journalists? What's the best way to do that in their niche?
Now, you might be looking for an SEO boost, a down-to-earth digital PR campaign to share your story, or maybe just some straightforward technical help to amp up your performance. Now that's where eCom Now comes in. A partner that's all about making things easier for your online store. Our services cover everything from creating professional content for your e-commerce categories to refining your product descriptions. Now, whether you're just starting out or have been in it for a while, we're here to deliver real impactful results that add to your bottom line without unnecessary commitments. You can order one-off or multiple projects with a quick turnaround. Simply choose what you need.
Okay, yeah. Again, great question. So when it comes to digital PR, there's two sorts. Two main sorts. Inbound, which is where the journalists are actively looking for experts on stories that they're working on, and they will post requests to say, hey, I'm looking for a health expert or a fitness expert to provide 1 or 2 lines of commentary on this article that I'm writing. And then you can provide those comments, and hopefully they'll quote you and they'll link back to your site. That's inbound. And obviously the main facilitator of that used to be Harrow, which went to Connectively, and now defunct, but that
Yep.
by no means that the game is over. There are
totally. Yeah.
there are multiple platforms, press plugs, quoted, response source, journalists using.
That's what we use. We pay for response source. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. You're
one of, I guess.
Journalists will use a hashtag journo request directly on X. Threads as well is really popular for journalists. You can follow journalists that write for publications within your specific niche. Set alerts as well on social. They'll often post their requests directly. This is a great way to start to get to know the journalists that are operating in your beat. Start either from the founder that's positioned themselves as that expert, or have that person on your team start scouring for these requests and just responding. If you've got a good setup, if you're clearly an expert working for that e-com store and the journalist can see that, at some point you're going to do a good pitch, impress the journalist, and then they're likely to come back to you to ask if you've got more comments. You'll get better at that. You'll hone your craft. You'll start winning it to getting coverage. And the other side is outbound. So that's rather than us waiting for the journalists to say, I'm working on a story, I'm looking for comments. This is where we're going to take our story, so it gives us a bit more control. We can utilize internal data, internal information, come up with a really clever, newsworthy story that resonates well with our brand. And we can go and outreach to journalists that we think will be receptive to that story. And the fact that you've already started on that inbound, warming up some of those journalists operating in your beat, it makes it much easier to run a successful outbound campaign because you've already got some warm journalists in your network which are likely to be receptive to a story.
So two sides, inbound and outbound. But I know from experience that so you built your list, you've got this amazing story, or you think you have. You've contacted 50, 100 journalists, and absolute crickets, nothing's happening. What would you say to those guys that are thinking, well, I've tried a bit of that. It's a bit like I tried a bit of SEO, I tried a bit of PPC. But obviously that sort of those relationships and really getting noticed in the inbox, really getting, some next steps and responses. What sort of tips and sort of experience can you share, with the listeners about really getting a response really in the inbox and getting your article, piece of work covered?
If I knew the holy grail answer to that, there is so much luck involved in it. All I can do is just give you some advice on best practices. But yeah, I mean, you are gonna have those campaigns where you think this is a great story. This is the most interesting thing ever to happen. It's resonating with the news cycle now because I'm in an e-com store that sells weight loss powder and Beyonce has just been featured in the news. Taking
it's a
weight
dream.
Loss powder. It's a dream come true. I've got a list of 100 of the best journalists and you don't get anything. Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to it. There is such a large element of luck to it. Some of the key things to do if you are going to do this on your own. First of all, email deliverability. So this often gets overlooked, and we're having huge monumental changes to email. Microsoft and Google. So you need to be checking your settings. Don't use your main domain. For the love of God, don't use your main domain. Have a secondary domain, which is similar, 301 redirect to your actual domain. So if the journalist checks out that domain, they do land on your website, but you're protecting the health of that domain. You need to be regularly checking settings, DMARC, DKIM, all of these things that I don't really understand, but check them. Speak to your host. They'll do like 99% of this stuff for you for free. Simple Google search, what settings do I need? And you can speak to your host provider and say, hey, can you make sure these settings are on this domain email? So that's the first thing. You want to be tracking open rates as well. You want to be doing really clear and concise subject lines on what your story is. Journalists are busy people. They often don't reply. I mean, you've probably experienced this. You'll do a campaign, you won't hear anything, then all of a sudden you'll see the story go live. So they've picked up with it and they've run with it, but they don't even bother to email you and tell you. So you want short, concise subject lines. You want newsworthy, interesting stories that align with that journalist and what they do. So if you operate a health related e-com store, and you've managed to put together a really good story, and you've got a doctor to put some quotes in it, and it's really, really, really good and clever. You don't want to be emailing travel journalists because they don't write about that. And it's not going to land. You'll get flagged as spam, and you'll just diminish any future campaigns that you run. So you want to be hyper-targeted, personalized, short, snappy, to the point, interesting stories, really well, clearly defined target lists. And you want to be 100% psychologically prepared to fail, and then eventually, you'll land.
So do you recommend having, I mean, obviously there's an option to obviously for our listeners to use services like yourself, and we'll talk about that more. But for those that maybe want to scale more internally and do this themselves, do you sort of have like dedicated people, or recommend dedicated people for the building of the lists and contacting contacting potential potential sites, and somebody that's focused on the writing, somebody that's focused on the networking and the building the relationships, and because they're very different skills, aren't they? Obviously, trying to get building a database of very high end journalists can take some doing, whereas certain elements of what you said are easier than others. Obviously, the technical side, I wouldn't have a clue with that, but I've got a technical team that, So how do you structure your team? Have you got specialists in each area?
The people that know how to handle each area do each area. But to speak to your point of like people doing it on their own, I definitely think there will be e-com store founders, owners out there that are like way more set up for successful PR than they even know. Yeah. And for these guys, I think it's a good idea to give it a try on your own. There's some super low cost entry level platforms you can use, like Prowly, all in one, I think like $99 a month or $199 a month, something like that. So that compared that to like the software we use to gather journalist emails. This is pretty decent for like an all-in-one package. And if let's say you've got an e-com store and you're found, let's say, for example, you've got an e-com store that sells bicycle equipment, and you've got a co-founder or a founder of that company that previously won the Tour de France, let's say. You guys are really set up to go and give this a go for yourself, because you've got such a great profile. And this is what the journalists love. I bet you've got some great stories that I bet you can come up with something really interesting. Just make sure you build a really, really good list. You can manually add to that list by doing a Google search on your keyword. Look for high-end news publications that have covered that in the last few months. Just really, really hyper-focus, pick, 10, 20, 30 journalists, come up with a good story, position it from your Tour de France winning co-founder and give it a go, because you've already got so many of the ingredients there for a successful campaign. If you want to try and do this like in-house, then like you said, Richard, utilize those people. I mean, I know enough about email to be able to type to a dev and say the email's not working. So use your email people to make sure you've got good email. List building can be VA work. Just give like sort of clear instructions. And copy and the actual stories, there is a bit of a skill to that, a bit of creativity, and data campaigns work really well as well. And again, there's a bit of a sort of data skill to that, but you will have people on your team that will lend themselves to these individual elements of a successful PR campaign.
I think that's brilliant. I would say to the guys, maybe hit pause and just step back through Chris's list there, because I think, it's an area where, as a founder and experienced, if you're experienced in that product, i.e. you won the Tour de France, you sell bikes, that's quite an extreme, that would be great.
Yeah.
But if you're if you sell barbecues and you won the barbecue championships in the US, that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
Because that is a thing, apparently. But I think... a lot of people will sell things that a lot of e-com stores are maybe selling things that aren't that, shall we say, sexy. And when we talk about the different types of PR, we talked about inbound, outbound, and then we touched on, data-led, and again, responsive, reactive. But product PR specifically, of maybe industries, I think of some of the things we sell. There's nothing we don't sell. I don't think anybody could test me really and say something that we don't sell. I'm sure there is things we don't sell, but we sell most things. And some things, are pretty boring.
Go on. Give me an example. I want to hear your boring product.
I'm trying to make it as hard as possible because I had a couple and I thought I know where you'll go with that one. So just give me a second. I'm going to go with, see, I've made a rub for my own back here because all of a sudden I'm thinking, yeah, that's an easy one. That's an easy one. So we sell radiators.
That's really PR friendly. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a radiator e-com store. Does it look radiatory from the homepage?
Yes. Yeah. You go to the homepage and all they sell is radiators. We've actually got 3 clients that sell radiators. 4, I think. Different, some are very. Sorry. Go on.
Anything in that home space. Is especially UK media. They love that stuff, and if you can time as well, so seasonality, as we're approaching the winter now, freezing pipes, this sort of thing, top 5 tips to make sure your pipes don't freeze this winter. You'd want an engineer, like I said. You want to find that expert, a boiler man, a gas man. I don't know what a radiator expert is specifically, but anything that fits broadly within that. And this stuff gets lapped up by the UK media. Come up with an interesting story that is timed well. Then that is a sexy. If I get approached by a radiator client, I'm excited.
Yeah,
go on, give me another one. Let's think of some old ones.
So we have a client that sells safes.
Okay, safe. So that is trickier. That is a little trickier. So I'm thinking the finance route. Or I'd be thinking home security, which does do very well. But again, you need to position that expert. But home security, as we're approaching Christmas, I'm sure we do really well with like a home security sort of story. But if you see that the key is to broaden that topicality and how closely relative it is.
Yeah.
But it is newsworthy. I mean, you can see, you're a UK guy. You see the Mirror, the Express, the Sun. You see these stories. You'd see expert reveals. Where to hide, best places to hide Christmas presents. Getting burgled this Christmas. So the key then comes down to the quality of that story. It comes down to how you're positioning it. So the owner of the safe e-com store, are we doing it from the owner? Does he have any sort of home security expertise, or does he have someone on his team that's like a home security expert or a safe expert, and we can position them accurately and make them appear to be the expert that they are, and then the journalist will trust and see that credibility. And I can already think now of 5-10 more ideas that would do really well for them.
Yeah, I get it, and I think that's a really good point. So that thing you sell, what can you align that with? Obviously, radiators, we went with the weather change now. We're sitting here when this episode goes live in the UK, the weather's going to be pretty poor. There's that turn, saving money. Obviously, what can you do to, you're going to have your radiators on more, but what can you do to maintain them, look after them to save you money? And obviously, cost of living is an issue at the moment, or it's a big topic. Safe, security, but also, hiding things, securing things. Christmas is coming, tie it in with Santa Claus somehow. Maybe, you could have a comedy angle. But something you touched on about 10 minutes ago was like data-led campaigns. I always think like sources of data. Is there any sort of fairly unknown to our listeners, or you think might be fairly unknown sources of data that, I think you could share with our listeners to obviously use data within campaigns to then make comparisons and so we did, going back to the safes one, we did a security piece and sort of got data around the most burgled towns in the UK and then did an infographic to do with
that's right
to do with that, and then we made it more localized so we could get in local paper or local online media. We found a company that had about 20 different online publications, but they're all regionalized. So we took this national campaign and made it local, and then got on quite a lot of local sites. But in terms of sources of information, data, any specifics that you could share?
Yeah, that's great. What you just said there. Now that's where my mind would have gone for something like that. So yeah, I'd say there's a number of great places that we can get data from so many places now. And the important thing now with AI is we are able to process and ask questions and understand that data in a really, really, really interesting, fast, quick, intuitive way. So it's not just about, oh, I've got all this data. That's great. We need to find a newsworthy story. So with you and the campaign that you ran with the where the most burglaries were, that would have been of interest to those regional areas that had the highest or the lowest amounts of burglary, and therefore it becomes a newsworthy and interesting piece. But yeah, an excellent source of data. The first place that you should look is any internal data that you've got. So if you've got like regional sales figures, returns figures, if you sell sex toys and you have like a certain part of the country buying more sex toys than any other part of the country.
That's a good one. Yeah.
You've already, that's the look in your own backyard first, because you could be sitting on a news story just within your own internal data. Other places, you can do things like freedom of information requests from like the UK government, US versions as well, where you can ask for data specifically around something you think may be of interest. So where have been the most burglaries in the last 12 months within a particular region or within a country, or have there been any crimes, sex toy reported crimes across the UK, let's say?
You're propaganda for it now, aren't you?
So yeah,
man, 40 years old gets hammered. Sorry, actually, no, it's battered. I mean, it's probably the better. Gets battered with something.
Yeah. And then again, you can look for data using places like social media, Instagram, hashtags, can scrape sites, places like Zillow, these big powerhouse like real estate sites. We can scrape house prices changes. And again, we can just, the more innovative that we can be, and the more original our data. There was a great campaign somebody ran recently, which was to do with the I think it was either the bluest oceans or the most yellow beaches, the whitest beaches, and they just took a bunch of like publicly available photos, but then they calculated like the hex color of the actual image. And then they did a graph, and then they were able to plot which was the bluest ocean. Yeah, genius. Yeah. Super simple, but it's original data, and the journalist is going to lap it up.
I've seen that. That's great, and that is a really good idea. Yeah. So that comes down to having sort of a creative people, obviously having a team like yourself on board to have sort of access to different things, and just like getting like in the stores that are listing, just making it part of the process of coming up with ideas. Which is very much what we do. If we have a new client here, we put a meeting request in for the bulk of the team, and maybe 8 or 9 people might turn up for like a 15-minute brainstorm, but a very structured, about 25-minute brainstorm, just like we're doing now, or you're doing. It's just you come up with different ideas, and then think, how can we connect that to, or where can we get the data source for that, or and then next thing you've got potentially a really good idea. It can be quite difficult on your own, isn't it? Hence why people hire companies like yourselves.
The team ideation sessions are a brilliant thing to do. You can do something called force connection, something we do. So you just get AI to generate, let's say 10, 20, 30 random words, and then take that random word and try and find a connection to your brand and your company. And you'll quickly start coming up with crazy ideas, really interesting things. And then within that, there may be like, a real golden nugget, something where you go, hang on, this would be really interesting. All we need to do is find the data, but we could find out how many X's are doing whatever, and really good. And it gets the team juices, the creativity flow. You may not have a single, like that's the creative person in the team, but collectively as a group bouncing off ideas. And it's fun as well. If you do have the sex toy e-com shop, then it's going to be a lot of fun. And the radiator guys as well. It will be fun for them as well. I promise.
We've had them both on. We had a sex toy shop on the podcast about 6 episodes ago. That was in person as well. And they brought quite a lot of products with them. So that was fun, embarrassing.
Richard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had to turn down the redness on the camera on that day. It was a lady that came in as well. So I was, it was quite a fun afternoon, to be fair. They brought all sorts of goodies in. And it's funny, actually, they left. So all the samples, if you like, they brought in probably about 10 samples. I won't probably go into the details of all the samples, but and then I left them on the counter in one of the offices here. I said to the guys, "Oh, such and such came in yesterday and left all these. Help yourself." I came in the next day; they'd all gone.
They're all gone. Bloody hell.
Yeah, they'd all gone. So I can only imagine it'd be quite amusing to be a fly on the wall at some of the teams, when they went home at night, going, "Oh, did you have a good day at work? Yeah, I got this dildo."
Yeah.
That literally would have happened. Yeah. So
Brilliant.
But yeah, no, brilliant. So, okay. So ultimately, we covered quite a lot of ground there. I think, some great insights there, Chris, from sort of like in the trenches. A couple more points. I mean, influencer marketing, we're doing more and more, slight tangent, but more and more with TikTok Shop, for example, and working with influencers from a TikTok perspective and from a slightly different angle. But in terms of influencers and digital PR, what role do you see influencers playing more and more sort of in terms of getting coverage for clients?
Yeah, I mean, more so now than ever. If you can begin to make those like brand partnerships, influencers, don't forget, they're already in that newsworthy position. The difficulty with the influencers and then leveraging that influence for your own digital PR efforts. First of all, it's going to be like what it is that you want to achieve. So if it's a pure link building play, or if you're looking for like wider coverage, because as SEOs and link builders, we've sort of hijacked what one might call like traditional PR, which is obviously just to, get your brand and your name out there, which could be in print, news, any form of traditional media. But as SEOs and link builders, we leverage digital PR in order to get coverage. But really what we want is the link on BBC or Forbes or New York Times.
Yeah.
That's what's going to drive the SEO efforts in Google. But like I said at the beginning of the podcast, it's about brand messaging, brand visibility everywhere we can be, because people aren't just going to Google now. They're going to search GPT. They're searching in TikTok. So the more that we can have a clear visibility in that ethos of connected media, the better it's going to be for our brand and our business. But we can definitely leverage influencers. It's a great way to do it. When I was talking at the beginning, we said maybe you've got an e-com shop that sells fitness equipment. If you've got nobody in the team that's sort of any clear fitness expert, then try and partner with a fitness instructor influencer, and then you can come up with some clever ideas, some clever stories with them, and you can have much higher success rate on digital PR because this guy's already a newsworthy fitness influencer. So just makes sense.
They've already got the audience. Great stuff. So tracking success with digital PR, I think, our agency, we like to think we're obsessed with, results. And I think every agency out there sort of say that, but ultimately trying to track back as much as possible to revenue, which we could do a whole episode on this piece, but digital PR, sort of tracking the metrics that matter. You mentioned obviously links and getting that link. So in terms of, I think it's pretty obvious that it's very important from an SEO perspective to get the link, but maybe sometimes and quite often you don't get the link, from publications. Have you got like a little trick, not a trick, but like, do you obviously go back to them and say, hey, where's my link, dude? Pretty much.
Well, I mean, funny you should say, I mean, I would say 40% plus of the billable links that we display to a client once a campaign is completed, at least 40% of them have come post publication of the article. So namely, it was an unlinked mention, and then our systems and processes led to us being able to get that link added.
You're going back to them with your systems and processes, whether that's automated or via somebody going, hey, thanks for that piece. I loved it. Love what you did there. However, could you please, do you mind just giving me a little link? Yeah.
And no, that's not automated at all. I wouldn't recommend that. Personally, I know people do that, but for us, it's like you are so close to the finish line with an unlinked mention. Like, just put the effort into, and there's many. The first and foremost, you need to be tracking those unlinked mentions. And for larger brands and larger e-com stores, especially like product-focused e-com stores as well, you want to be tracking products and brand vigorously, because even if you're not going to get a link added to a piece of PR that you are actively involved in, if you have a newsworthy product that people are talking about on the internet, you want to be tracking that. And if somebody mentions your business, your brand, or your product, and they haven't linked, you should be going and saying, hey, in the nicest possible way, please add a link. And that's going to compound the effect of that will compound. So we do that for our clients anyway. We track everything. And then with the unlinked mentions, first and foremost, you want to be seeing if you've got an existing communication thread with that journalist. So let's say you've been talking to that journalist for, a week, then double checking facts, figures and whatnot. And they've included you in their Forbes article, but they didn't link. That's obviously first port of call is go back to the journalist and say, hey, I thought, why didn't you link to me? You want to try and actually get that link request in writing as early as possible, but without really formally asking for a link. It's quite tricky to do, but they're much more likely to give you a link after the fact if it's been discussed in writing within an existing email thread. And that's just because they get really nervous around their editors and whatnot if they feel like they've not delivered on something that was promised. But you want to just sort of say in a nice way, like, in order to attribute me for this, please could you link here? And then if they don't respond to that, then by way of omission, it's almost like, they should then add that in. Outside of that, then you want to go to editors of the publication. You can go to sister publication editors. You can make threats. You can say, you didn't link to me, remove my quotes. And 90% of the time they'll come back and they'll say, yeah, okay, we'll move your quotes. So we've stopped doing that one. Doesn't work.
You learned a lesson on that one.
And then you can just be, really nice and just say, I'd really like you to add this link because I put a lot of time and effort into this. Get really humanistic about it.
That's great.
Speak to the human nature of it. But sometimes it'll just be completely out of the control. Maybe a complete no link policy from a publication point level.
It's just a numbers game, isn't it? It's frustrating when you land a cracking publication and there isn't a link. You go back and they go, "Oh, sorry, our policy is no links," and you're like, But you still got that.
It's still a piece of coverage. It's still and what I would do in that situation, if they've quoted the expert or they've quoted the person that was behind that press release, behind that story, but they've omitted a mention of your brand. And they're refusing to add a link as policy, then get them to add that brand name in there, because Google and the LLMs, especially if it's a big publication, they will see that. If it's the BBC, if it's Forbes, if it's New York Times, you want your ecom name shop, your brand name in that copy, even if there's no link. That is still very valuable.
Yeah, great point. I think just as you said, sort of mixing those two things together, you might not necessarily be working on a campaign right now, but just being aware of any brand mentions that are out there of your brand. One, obviously making sure, there's two things here, but if there's brand mentions out there, just going back and requesting links from those as well. But obviously, like you say, if they won't do links to your product placements or whatever it may be, then just adding the brand in there for the wider sort of LLMs and some great stuff there, Chris. The last couple of questions before we run out of time.
Okay.
I think, my mind's buzzing with ideas and I'm sure our listeners are thinking, right, we could do that. We know this guy and John in accounts is really good with this and we could do the data thing and this and, obviously, there's a lot to it as we both know. But I think it'd be good for you to step through maybe, a campaign that you've been working on in the last maybe 12 months and some of the results that you've seen that might be quite relatable to our listeners around how you did a campaign for like e-commerce.
So we worked with fitness apparel e-com store in the sort of martial art sort of clothing and related equipment sort of e-com shop. They did a package with us December last year, so tail end of last year. And as part of our onboarding with them, we were able to get a fitness instructor, positioned on that site in order for us to run a lot of the inbound. So we would answer the inbound requests from journalists. And we did some outbound stuff as well, where we came up with some interesting like fitness related martial arts sort of stories. And this worked really, really well. So it was a 20 link campaign. So we got obviously more coverage than that, but 20 billable links on some huge websites, GQ Magazine, The Sun, iNews, Tom's Guide, Express, GB News, Metro, Daily Record, Best Life, some huge publications. And like I always say, and as I'm sure you say to clients as well, that coupled with their other SEO efforts. So obviously they also continue to produce good content. But that coupled with, this hugely successful PR campaign that we did resulted in, I think they went from about 8,000 organic sessions per month in Google. And then today, so this is coming up to 12 months later, it's a 225% increase. So they're at 26,000 organic sessions now. And their graph is just all the way up, which in this environment, if you look at traffic graphs on Ahrefs or SEMrush from, many, many different websites, it's not all roses, but yeah, these sorts of links, they align you with the sites that not only Google, but the LLMs trust. So we trust those huge authority tier 1 publications. And if they are linking to you, then obviously we know Google's algorithm works via links. We don't fully understand the LLM models yet, but it's largely thought that links are at least recognizable coverage or mentions on places that they can trust, because these models have to output information that they trust. So they have to get that information from places that they trust. It logically makes sense that if your brand is being featured in multiple trusted publications, then it's going to have a benefit in the LLMs as well. So yeah, it was a hugely successful campaign, and it was a lot of fun.
I love it. So using digital PR to ultimately build high authoritative links to internal pages of an e-com store. That's literally what it's about, isn't it? If you're from a digital PR link building process point of view, getting those links, we as you said, it contributed. Matt, you've obviously the site, no doubt, doing various other things, but quite often this is the part, the link building digital PR piece that gets missed. So I like to finish every episode, Chris, with a book recommendation. Do you have a book to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, well, I hadn't read a physical book for years, like a long, long time. So I do audio books and podcasts ferociously, but I did the 75 Hard recently.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I saw Joe from Fat Joe's agency had posted that he'd done it on Twitter, and I thought, I'm already getting up at 5 a.m. anyway, because my wife has work at 6. I was already going to the gym at 6 a.m. till 7, and I thought, may as well do the 75 Hard. It's just an extra 45-minute workout, do a diet, drink loads of water, and read 10 pages of a physical book. So I did it. I read 2 books, but the one I recommend is by a guy called Felix Dennis. It's called How to Get Rich. Sounds like a scam book. It's not. It's fantastic. This guy owned a big print media publishing business in the UK. He made a lot of money, and it's a really, really interesting story. And I'm currently reading, for the nerds out there, this is brilliant. It's like bite-size, pocket-size astrophysics for people in a hurry, like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Wow.
So, but that's short and sweet, but if you're into like dark matter and all that stuff, then it's really good.
So did you do the 75 Hard first time then? You did it all the way through?
I did it, yeah.
Impressive, Chris.
Yeah.
Well done, Chris. That is impressive. Yeah, I have to admit, I downloaded that about 3 years ago. Got to day 6.
Yeah, no, it was good. I don't look like a sports athlete. I'm still, need to. It was psychologically, it was good. It didn't result in the Adonis physique. I thought it might.
That's impressive. That's it. That is very impressive. So basically 2 workouts a day, isn't it? 1 workout and one. What's the difference between the 2 workouts?
Two 45s. Yeah. So I was doing my gym workout in the morning, early 6 a.m. and then I do my second as like an afternoon walk, fast walk. But that was the hard one, because I just couldn't be bothered. But I did do it. I thought, I've done 5 days, I've done 10 days, I've done 20 days. Just keep, may as well get to
that. That is impressive.
No alcohol as well. 75 days.
Yeah. Very impressive. Very, very impressive, isn't it? That is. So, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. For those that want to find out more about you, more about your agency, Linkifi, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn, Chris Panteli, Chris at Linkifi.io, or Twitter, Linkifi _, I think. Yep.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we'll hook that up in the show notes. But thanks for coming on the show, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah, I'll see you in a week's time. Cheers, Richard.
You will. Yeah. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast. So you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.